It's usually the other way around.
Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Good evening. I will call the March 18th Select Board meeting to order. I don't believe we have any changes to the agenda this evening, so we will take it as written. And we are all present, so we'll be doing regular voting rather than roll call, and I will turn it over to the town manager for announcements.
Thank you. This meeting is being video and audio recorded. The Nantucket Affordable Housing Trust is accepting nominations for the 2026 Dr. Howard Dickler Citizen Award. This honors a community member who has demonstrated exceptional voluntary leadership and advocacy in support of affordable housing on Nantucket. Nominations may be submitted through April 10th, and more can be learned on the town website, and there are links on the Select Board meeting agenda. The May 4th, 2026 annual town meeting. Warrant article information may be found online, and we have, can you link on that, Greg? Does that work? Number 2? Yeah, that. We just been wanting to show on the screen what the web page looks like for the annual town meeting. There's a lot of information on here, ranging from the warrant itself to recommendations from the Capital Program Committee, Town Council, comments on citizen warrant articles, and on the side, on the left, there are web pages for different of the debt exclusion articles. And on the right, there's a tax rate calculator that can be used for taxpayers to figure out what the tax impact is on their specific tax bill if these projects are approved. So I just want to show people that. The Community Claims Fund for the Vineyard Wind blade failure settlement with GE Vernova is launched. That launched on Monday, January 26th. And there's a dedicated website with more information and instructions on how to file a claim. Claims must be filed no later than June 26th. There is a third-party administrator for the fund. And again, the information is on the Select Board meeting agenda. We have a proclamation request from Nantucket Lights. I think Gail Walker is going, the president is going to read that. And then I have 3 additional announcements that came in after the agenda went out. Thanks.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. So for the record, I'm Gail Walker. I'm the president and founder of Nantucket Lights. We're an all-volunteer public citizen advocacy group dedicated to reducing light pollution on the island to preserve our nighttime environment and starry nights. So thank you for considering our request and for the opportunity to speak in support of it. We're proposing that once again, you show your support for the preservation of Nantucket's dark skies by adopting a proclamation in support of this year's International Dark Sky Week. For those listening who aren't familiar with that, International Dark Sky Week is a designated week in April each year when people all over the world celebrate the dark and natural light, raise awareness about the harm from light pollution, and promote the use of environmentally responsible outdoor lighting. This year, the dates for it are April 13th through April 20th. The proclamation we proposed is identical to the one that the Select Board adopted last year and the year before, except for the change in dates. Since it's part of the meeting package, I'll just briefly summarize it here. It recognizes that the beauty and wonder of the natural night sky on Nantucket is part of our heritage that should be protected and preserved. It notes all the ways that light pollution is harmful to people as well as wildlife, beyond making it harder to see the stars at night. It declares April 13th through April 20th, 2026 to be International Dark Sky Week on Nantucket, and it calls upon all residents to commit to learning about light pollution and the steps they can take to reduce it. Adopting this proclamation would reaffirm the board's support for preserving our dark skies and hopefully help inspire everyone to do their part to reduce light pollution on the island, including complying with the new outdoor lighting bylaw that was adopted in 2023 and now in effect. So thank you again for considering our request. And of course, I'd be happy to answer any questions you have.
No questions, but a motion. Yes, please.
I move that we adopt the proclamation, the Dark Skies Proclamation again this year.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
That carries unanimously. Thank
Thank
you
you s-
very much.
Thank you so much. If the town could publicize the proclamation on social media and in the newsletter, we'd appreciate that too, to help draw attention to it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Gil. The 3 additional announcements are as follows. We have scheduled some public informational sessions on a couple of town meeting warrant articles. One of them is Article 15. This is an appropriation for a sewer extension in the Somerset Needs area. We have 2 sessions scheduled at this time. One is going to be held on Thursday, April 9th at 5 p.m. That will be in person only here in the community room, Thursday, April 9th at 5 p.m. The other is remote only on Tuesday, April 14th at 5 p.m. And the details on how to log into that will follow. Another public informational session on Article 71 of the 2026 annual town meeting warrant. That is a stormwater management bylaw. We've started to get some inquiries in that. It is perhaps the longest article in the warrant. And we are holding an info session on that one on Monday, April 13th at 5 p.m. That will be on Zoom only. And again, details will follow. Lastly, National Grid representatives are scheduled to provide an update on N-Grid's smart meter program at the Select Board's meeting next Wednesday, March 25th. And I think they are scheduling some public informational sessions to happen the following day, Thursday, March 26th. I think those are in progress to be scheduled and locations to be identified. And they indicated that they would be able to hold others later in April and May, and those would be scheduled at a later time. And hopefully they will have some information on that at your meeting next week.
Okay, are there any opening select board announcements or comments? Okay. Next up, I do have some updates on public comment questions from prior select board meetings that I will read to you all now. On March 4th, Robert Bates suggested town administration engage in discussions with utility companies about burying utilities in remote areas of the island. The town's response. Putting utility lines underground can be complex and require significant coordination with multiple agencies. Funding for associated costs, including but not limited to engineering, permitting, project management, and legal expenses, is not currently available. This is an initiative that could be raised during the Select Board's annual strategic planning retreat. Robert Bates also inquired about flooding on Commercial Street during Winter Storm Hernando. The town's response. The town has several stormwater-related initiatives underway across the island, including downtown along Washington Street to Francis Street and along Easy Street. These projects are intended to address stormwater and other flooding events, as well as sea level rise and climate change impacts. The installation of backflow mechanisms is something that needs detailed modeling as to unintended consequences and is included in the overall scope of these initiatives. Meanwhile, the flooding that occurred during Hernando was not unusual for that type of storm event. Then Burton Balkind commented on concerns related to the number of trucks that may be needed to transport sand to Baxter Road for the GO2 project and the potential impact of noise, vibrations, and traffic, and whether this topic may be discussed publicly by the Select Board. The town's response. Scheduling such an agenda item is under internal review with the chair and vice chair who set the board's meeting agenda. From March 11th, Jason Grazier inquired about the basis for a social media post issued by the town in connection with National Grid's smart meter program and reported electricity billing issues affecting some of Nantucket's customers. The town's response. As explained in its Wednesday, March 11th, 2026 social media and website posts, the town was notified by National Grid of a billing issue affecting some Nantucket customers and shared the information provided to inform residents. The town relayed the information specifically provided by National Grid. The full announcement was published on the town website and distributed through several channels, including email and social media on Wednesday, March 11th. An abbreviated version of the message initially shared on Instagram was clarified later that same evening. The smart meter deployment is a statewide initiative approved and regulated by the Massachusetts Department of Public Utilities. National Grid will be implementing this program across its service territory, and the town does not have authority over the utility's billing practices, meter technology, or customer service policies. Residents with ongoing questions or concerns about their electric bill are advised to contact National Grid directly at 1-800-322-3223. Residents may also contact the town's energy office. Energy Coordinator Lauren Sinatra can help relay questions to National Grid and/or request clarification when needed. She can be reached at lsinatra@nantucket-ma.gov or 508-325-5379. The town has requested the National Grid representatives attend the board's March 25th meeting to provide an update. Members of the media seeking clarification on town communications are always welcome to contact the communications office directly. So those answers are also on the website. And now we have public comment for items that are otherwise not on our agenda for discussion this evening. And just please keep your comments to 3 minutes or less. Good evening.
Awesome. Cliff Williams. I just wanted to inquire about some comments that were made last week when Malcolm gave the update on the African Meeting House. I guess the town.
Clifford, we do have that on the agenda, and I would be happy to recognize you when we get there.
Okay, I was just gonna. All right, perfect. Thanks.
Thank you. Good
Hi.
evening.
Amy Eldridge. I just wanted to let everybody know that on Saturday, April 11th, I will be hosting State Auditor Diana DiZoglio. Will be coming to Nantucket to do a community forum here at 4 Fairgrounds in this room from 1 to 3, and I'll be getting some information out to the town, but just wanted to get it out there that she'll be coming to speak about what's going on up on Beacon Hill. Thank you.
Thank you. Catherine Ward had her hand up, but she took it down. Okay. 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 Campbell.
Good evening, Campbell Sutton. So I actually used my phone to take notes, so we'll see if I can get through this in 3 minutes. Okay, so first, I'm wondering whether the town has any ability to delay the installation and filling of any new pools until we become drought-free. We're in a drought 2, as you know. In the fall, Mark Willits, I believe, gave a presentation, I think, to the planning board, maybe the select board, and was talking about that we'd need 22 inches of precipitation to get out of the drought situation we were in. I know it seems like we've had a lot of precipitation, but given that an inch of water is approximately 10 to 11 inches of snow, it doesn't really add up to that much. Plus, we're continually using it. And I'm a little concerned that there's going to be a push to utilize a lot of water to fill pools and new pools specifically. So that was one thing. The second thing is I'd like to thank everybody for approving the experimental stop sign. I just happened to go through there early this morning when it was school, everyone getting to school, and it really is a challenge to cross the street, take a right, take a left, whatever. So I think that stop sign will really be beneficial. And third, this sort of tags into what Libby presented earlier in the meeting, where she was saying about the town meeting website and what's posted there, which is very helpful. So thank you for that. The one thing I find would be helpful to have posted there are the maps that go along with any of the warrant articles that relate to not just zoning, but it's, referring you to map so-and-so, page so-and-so, but it's not readily available. So when you're referring to the warrant and then you're trying to find out where this is, for instance, I think it's 46 Sparks Ave for the cemetery. You know, I understand that, but I think if one saw what property, then it would be easier to explain, you know, to self-explain. So I think, yeah, 29 minutes over. Okay, thanks, everyone. Have a good night.
Thanks. Um,
Good evening, Madam Chair, Jim Mondani. I'm here to address a couple meetings ago, the board addressed the Sconset Bluff and made some decisions related to it. And I'm just here to ask that the board reconsider it and look at this more thoroughly. I think it caught a lot of us off guard and didn't realize it was going to slip through the way it did. But to me, I think the board exceeded its duty in granting these rights to private citizens. I think the issue is very simple. It's either a public way or it's not. And I think it's very clear that it's a public way. And I don't think the board can grant private citizens the right to, and you can call them whatever you want, guidelines, restrictions. I know they're not enforceable, but, or you claim they're not enforceable, but you voted on it, kind of own it. To me, you abdicated your police powers to a docent or a guard, whatever you want to call them, and you're restricting access or allowing them to put a sign up, which again is not enforceable, but we all know the purpose of that is to restrict it. And I don't think it's any different than any other public right of way. My neighbor and I live on Appleton Road. I too have a public walkway. We call it a sidewalk on Appleton. I don't think I have this ability to hire a docent because I want to drink coffee in the morning and not view people walking by. You just don't have the rights to do that. And I think you're sending a message, whether you are directly or tacitly, that are preventing people from going through there. And we talk about it in terms of tourists, but they're no different. Every single person has a right to use that. They can go and watch the sunrise, they can watch the sunset. We have a set of laws. Everything that the Sconset people, all the reasons that they gave you, we have laws on the books to prevent it. We have police that can enforce this. We do not need a private group of citizens that probably aren't even here all year to enforce this because John Shea wants to drink coffee on his front porch. I do too. I don't know if Campbell does on Appleton Street, but you cannot do this. And I know the step speech was mentioned, but again, I think it's pretty clear that you exceeded your authority in allowing them to control this one piece of land. And I ask that you reconsider it. I did go to the roadway committee and also express the same thing, but
Jim.
I hope that you do that. Thank you.
Thank you. Your time's up. Catherine Ward online.
Yes, thank you. I just wanted to follow up very briefly to some of the comments that you made about National Grid. They called me today after my many phone calls to them, and they gave me a direct number to call. And for anybody on Nantucket who is having issues, they would love to be able to get to the bottom of this. And if, with your permission, Madam Chair, I'd like to give you that phone number so that they can start doing the analysis on people who are having these horrific bills.
Yes, go ahead and state the phone number.
Okay, it's 862-258-0136. And the analyst name is Jenna Rock, R-O-C-K.
Okay, thank you.
Mhm.
Anyone else for public comment this evening? Okay, seeing none. There's no new business. We have approval of minutes, payroll warrants, treasury warrants, and pending contracts. Are there any questions or comments?
No, move approval of all four.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye, that carries unanimously 5-0. Town managers report, our island home.
Thank you. So last fall, late last fall, early winter, the town administration was asked by the board to prepare and engage a third party actually to prepare a pro forma for the operations expected for the new Our Island Home facility so that projections could be developed and reviewed as to operating expenses and whether or not they are going to be projected to be more than they are now or about the same, or what that all looks like. So obviously some assumptions have to be made, but we do have we engaged Clifton Larson Allen CLA to do that project. They are a firm skilled in that area, and finance director is going to do an overview of that as well. Brian.
Thanks, Libby. So as the town manager mentioned, at the direction of the board, we did put together, we discussed this with Clifton Larson Allen, who had actually previously done some work on pro forma analysis for the operation when we had gone down the road of building the new island home a previous time. So we re-engaged with them. Tom Hammond is here. Myself, the deputy town manager, Rick Sears, Bob Eisenstein, we all met with the CLA group, who has vast experience and knowledge in kind of doing this type of work in this industry. And Tom is here to take you through the report that's in your packet. We merely provided them operational data, the debt service data for this, and then they took that information and built this pro forma using their expertise. We did get to review it a little bit, but then we offered some input, but they're here to take you through the report, the rationale for some of what's in that report, and then we're here to have and happy to answer any questions that the board may have.
Thank you, Brian. Now, am I able to share my screen? Will you guys be able to see that?
Yes,
Or do you guys have the slides available? I can share my screen.
We do have the slides available, but Tom, if it's easier for you to share your
Perfect.
screen and take us through, I think that's okay too.
Okay. Well, thank you everyone for the opportunity to speak to this. It was a great experience working with the Our Island Home Management Group and Rick and Brian. I'm going to skip the first couple of slides in the packet. They're just disclaimer language about how this is a hypothetical forecast. It's using assumptions that are based on the best of our knowledge today. There are unknowns, obviously, with a forecast. With that said, we aimed for the most realistic assumptions to our knowledge today, without being overly optimistic or aggressive. The assumptions in this pro forma relate to the new Our Island Home, proposed new Our Island Home facility with a start or opening date of 2028 to 2029. So you'll notice these assumptions are inflated to reflect a few years out from now. I'm going to start at the top of this. So on the table to the right side, you'll see baseline assumptions, which really indicate what the starting point would be for this new proposed facility. And then we'll talk through what assumptions do we make after year one or after that starting point, whether those are expense increases, revenue rate increases, and then we can also discuss strategic assumptions around operational savings or additional operational costs, as well as capital assumptions around the project. So the initial assumption here is there would be a total of 45 private rooms with a stabilized occupancy of 42. So that 42 ADC is an average daily census of 42 individuals. Obviously, there are turnover that occurs throughout the year. So this would be a stabilized occupancy of 42. That 42 average daily census is split between private pay, Medicare, and Medicaid. So you'll be able to follow those here. That private pay accounts for 10 of those. Medicare accounts for 9 of those. Medicaid accounts for 23 of those. The private pay daily rate we have assumed at $800 per day, which is in line with the Medicare daily rate of $800 per day. The Medicaid daily rate would be at $260 a day. What this results in is operating revenues of $7.6 million per year. We are using operating expenses based on our best knowledge today and what we know of the current Our Island home facility. We estimate $11.8 million of operating expenses per year for an operating deficit of $4.2 million per year. That number will change in our forecast over time due to a number of variables. The revenue we have increasing at 3% per year for private pay rates, whereas our governmental payers, Medicare and Medicaid, increased by 2% a year. On the labor expense inflation, we have labor costs growing at 5.5% per year. You'll note that wages are increasing at 4% a year, whereas our medical insurance costs and our retirement obligation costs grow at 10% a year. That gets you to a weighted average of 5.5% per year. Non-labor expenses we have growing at 3% a year. And this results in a negative operating environment or a negative spread where our costs are growing faster than our revenues. So we'll have a negative operating spread of 2.3% per year. With the new facility, there are some operational savings that would come into play, as well as a couple additional costs. The one item that was identified was a savings to contract labor, where our Island home would focus on bringing in traditional staff labor as opposed to contract labor for a net savings of $100,000 per year. With the new space, there would be an expected additional housekeeping FTE, which equates to around $100,000 of wages and benefits. With the new facility, there would be annual utility savings of $155,000 per year. There'd be repair and maintenance savings with a new facility of an estimated $40,000 per year. And then with our increased census, specifically on the private side, there'd be additional therapy costs of approximately $100,000 per year. The net of these savings or additional costs would equate to $95,000 of operational savings compared to what's currently at the existing Our Island home facility. The last piece on this slide is capital assumptions, where the current estimated capital costs for this would be $134.4 million with a debt portion of $125.5 million. We go to the next slide. There is a set of visuals here to really tell the story of what this means, what those assumptions portray. So you'll see this top graph represents annual operating revenues. These are split out between our different payers. You can see that this number grows over time. We're assuming occupancy stays at 93% or 42 average daily census. However, our rates are increasing year over year. So you'll see revenue grow over time. On the expense side, you'll notice expenses are also growing over time, again, related to those inflation factors. And this bottom chart really shows the annual investment from the town. So the top number is our total investment per year, starting at $14.8 million and growing over time. The year one debt service amount would be $10.6 million. So that's principal and interest payments on borrowed funds related to this project. Our operations start at a net loss of $4.2 million per year and will continue to grow over time based on the inflating expenses that outgrow or outpace the growth in our revenues. This last slide is the numbers that go into those graphs. So just a different view, but it ultimately reflects what the high level statement of operations and cash flow related to Our Island home. So you'll see at the top, we have our operating revenues followed by our operating expenses. And then we are accounting for our debt service or our payments on our debt over the next 10 years. This results in a total subsidy or investment from the town that grows year over year, starting around that $14.7 million mark, ultimately 10 years out getting to a $17 million mark. And that's the work that CLA did. Rick and Brian, if you have anything to add to that, that'd be great. If not, I think we can open up to questions.
Brooke?
Brian, I'm going to make you come to the mic. Just for the public's benefit, we're looking at, a year one operating loss of 4.2 million, right? How is the operating loss of our island home funded now? And what mechanisms would we have to put in place as it grows?
So currently, through you, Madam Chair, currently there's a $5 million+ override that is able to be used to fund that projected operating shortfall. So it will grow over time. It grows currently at 2.5%. So as the dynamics or the metrics here change, it will grow. I think this points out at some point there may become more pressure on that than it can we can avail ourselves of with that. So there's going to have to be some decision at probably between 7 to 10 in what to do. But that's how it's currently funded. And what was the other part of that question?
No,
I'm
I
sorry,
think
apologies.
that's it.
Okay.
It's being funded with the override.
Correct.
And at some point, the current override will not be adequate.
It's projected in this, but this is
Yeah.
also, I want to caution everybody when looking at that this is the best guess that we have. The
Right.
best estimate based on CLA's vast experience in this and where the numbers are right now. It's to give us an idea of what the roadmap looks like.
Yeah. And that's one of the things that I asked for
Correct.
back in the fall. So
Did this,
it's just
hopefully
really
this
helpful.
met what you were looking for
Yeah.
and doing, okay.
Absolutely. And hopefully the community, obviously we're making assumptions. These are not written in stone. A lot of variables can change, but this is the best guess we can have, which was my question. What happens over time? What are we expecting with operating deficits? So
Sure.
thanks.
Just while we're on that, this is not the only service that we're subsidizing. So like for comparison, so that people understand that these are not businesses that turn profits. These are government subsidized services. How do we think we'll be projecting solid waste going forward? Because was it 11.6 that we subsidized that out of the general fund?
Sure. So through you, Madam Chair, to answer that, yes. I mean, currently we provide general fund revenue for Island Home, which was done through the override. We also provide a substantial amount of transfer from general fund revenues to cover the solid waste operation. I think you're right. I think it's right around 11.6 million. Now, the solid waste manager and DPW director were here last week with a proposal to change fees that hopefully over time will level that off so it doesn't have to continue to grow as it is. But that's been funded through overrides. And when we established the stormwater division as an enterprise fund, pending the bylaw and the ability to implement fees, that is being funded from a transfer from the general fund as well. So it's not unusual with some of the operations that we have here that we do make general fund revenue contributions to those operations.
Thank you. I just wanted to make the point for people that we subsidize many services and all of our expenses are growing. Amy?
Hi, Amy Eldridge. I have 2 questions. So I understand that Brian was speaking about that very bottom red line, the subsidy investment. We're currently doing 5 million, and I understand this is just a projected supposed path. But we're looking potentially worst case scenario, 17 million in year 10. That's a lot of money of forever and ever that we would override them the way we're doing the 5 million now. And then I believe it was last year, the Island Home had an update to the daily rate of pay, which I think went to 600 and they're projecting 800. When does that go into effect? And is there like a step up to that number or are you going straight there? And is that 800 really suitable? Should it be $1,000 a day to help offset some of the costs if we really want to have it? Thank you.
I can,
Through you, Madam Chair, if I can just make an observation to the previous speaker's comment, that bottom line number starting at 14 million in year one and potentially going to 17 million in year 10, it's made up of two components. It's made up of the operating transfer that is necessary and the debt service. The debt service is realistically a very big number in that. And I would point out, much as we made the observation about other enterprise funds, the general fund does support other debt from the enterprise fund. The town has voted overrides for debt related to sewer expansion. It's assumed 1/3 of the debt of a $45 million project for the expansion of the wastewater treatment facility previously. So it's not uncommon either when we're showing this pro forma that there are other enterprise funds that have received this type of transfer for debt service as well. So I just want to make sure that that's clear, that 17 million, almost 50% of that is the debt service on the amortization for the construction of the project. And I'll let
Thank you.
Bob speak to the rates.
Rick Sears also has his
Okay.
hand up.
Yep.
Bob, I'll go to you first and then. to
Yeah,
Rick.
through the chairman. To answer your question, yes, you're absolutely correct. Last year, we did start a campaign to do an annual increase in the rates. They're at 600 and 620 now. The timing is perfect to your question. We're just putting together now a schedule of gradual increases year over year for the next 3 to 5 years, which will hopefully get us to the $800 amount by the time the new building opens. And that's actually, we probably need to put that on the agenda for the select board. It's actually ready to review. The process is we have to put out a 60-day notice to the public, as you recall from last year. So we probably need to get that approved on your agenda in April so that we can get the letters out by May 1st. But there is a gradual increase. It's rough. We'll talk about it once we present it to the board, but that's exactly what we've just been completed. So thank you.
Thank you very much. Rick?
Sure, I was just going to add that to Ms. Eldred's question. The average daily rate, does $800 cover it? It sort of depends on what the census is for our island home. So if the census is 42 in year one on this page, your average daily rate is $770. So $800 certainly covers that. If the census is the other way around. If the census is higher, the rate is lower. If the census is lower, the rate is higher. So if there's only 38 people in our island home, the daily rate is more like 850. So we're right in the middle between 770 with 42 people there or 850 with 38 people there. So I think we've kind of tried to, this is a projection. It's 2.5 years out at this point in time. And so I think we've got it kind of pinned to a rate around $800 a day.
Thank you, Rick. Campbell? And then I'll come back to you, Amy. Sorry, Tom.
Hi, Campbell Sutton. So I guess I think what I got Mr. Turbot saying is that the debt for the structure itself is included in this piece, correct? Okay, so how long is it projected that it'll take to pay off the bond, I assume we're getting, or loan, or however you'd like to put it? And then just to get some idea, because we see this going up, up, and up, and somehow I sort of, and this is just to mortgages, so, and this is layman's thing. So, you know, the more I pay off on my mortgage principal, the less that other thing.
Interest.
Interest.
Yeah, the less interest there is, right? So I'm just wondering how I would see that. I can see that as a line, but I'm not seeing it as the numbers. So I'm just wondering there. Thank you.
So through you, Madam Chair, we are actually going to do this. We've projected when we built this pro forma to do a 20-year amortization on a level principal. method because level principal will actually reduce long-term the amount of interest that we pay on it because we're paying the same amount of principal every year against the debt. So it actually reduces the interest, and 20 years actually provided the greatest benefit in the initial calculations in terms of the total interest cost. It does obviously start with a little bit higher debt service payments and then they start to go down as that debt is amortized, but using a level principal methodology produces lower interest payments over the course of the debt. And this projection was 20 years. Now, when we do get to the point of if the project is successful in constructing it and permanently authorizing or borrowing the debt, depending on the market, that length could change depending on what the interest rates are and how we want to structure it to be most effective. But currently, we believe the 20-year amortization with level principal would be the best way to do this, given the vast number of projects that are coming would be behind this to potentially be needed.
Great. So it is.
Does that answer your question?
Yeah, because it is similar to
Yes.
a fixed rate
Correct.
mortgage that you can refinance based on
Correct.
conditions.
Yes.
So, thank you.
Thank you. Tom? Okay. Amy?
Sorry, Amy Eldridge again. I guess my question and my concern is that obviously we're the only town-run nursing facility, and we're going to have to think outside the box on how we help get this going. I mean, it's a lot of money for the building. When the new building gets in place, it's potentially an additional 10 or $15 million that they may need to get every year on top of the $5 million we're already giving them. So, I mean, is it a burden to keep it and have higher daily rates than the 800? Because I feel like if we could help ourselves, it might make people feel a little bit better about keeping it here if it was a little bit more self-sufficient. And because we're 30 miles out to sea, I don't want the island home to close, but I'm looking at my wallet and what I can afford to pay on my taxes for the building and then the additional upkeep of this facility. And we all know that when the Boys and Girls Club opened, that building tripled in size. It tripled its budgets, its insurance, its staffing, its liability, everything. So, I mean, the same principle has got to be in effect for the nursing home. So my thought is that if we were above the 800, if that's even allowed, would help us offset some of these costs so that you guys aren't coming back and asking the taxpayers for a lot of money, because $15 million a year forever and ever, amen, once this is built, we just need to know, but if there's ways that we can think outside the box on the daily rates, would be great, because I think it would open the minds of others to maybe agree to help support the new island home. But we're in a conflicting situation right now with the cost of the building and the cost to run it. And is it a way that we can keep it open and have to unfortunately go above and beyond what you guys are projecting as an $800 a day average? Thank you.
I can answer that if you want me to.
Yeah, Matt, go ahead.
Yeah, I think I have the answer to that. Those discussions, we're going to have them in a future meeting. Those discussions are being had. If we get it up to 800 and we find there's a lot of demand for a new building and we're able to carry more, those discussions are being had by the financial people in-house. So you're completely right. That's something that we will be thinking about and looking at when we get there. So.
As well as if we can get more short-term rehab because it's a nicer facility, then they'll be paid at higher Medicare rates instead of Medicaid is the money loser.
Hi, it's me again. So, because I can see where the bottom numbers are not helpful in this discussion, right? If we're thinking it's, $10 to $15 million, isn't the red line above it? And I cannot
The
read
middle numbers are the operating expense losses.
the middle red one.
The middle
right?
red line.
So because I thought what I heard, and I could be mistaken, but I thought I heard that we were at 5 million, and the idea, we don't spend that much, but we have that much, and that would take us 7 to 10 years, and then it would be viewed as increasing perhaps at 2.5%. So I could be getting this wrong, but I think that's what I was hearing. So we would be looking at sort of a number 10 in year 10 of this is all theoretical and all of that, but around the $8 million mark versus 15 million. Do you see what I'm saying?
What
There.
it says
Am I reading
on,
that
on
right?
here, if you can't, if you, is
I-
8,571 in year
Right.
10 for operating.
Right.
And
From 5
17
million.
inclusive of the debt service.
Correct, but okay, so here's a better way to put it perhaps. So that is on top of the 5 million that we currently do, that includes.
No, that's
it, right? So
inclusive.
that's what I'm saying. So we're
And-
really only increasing 3 million, potentially 3.5.
And that
over-
5
over
million
the 10-year period.
has
something
already
in that.
started growing at 2.5% since we instituted it, which was what, 2 years ago or 3 years ago? The override.
Yeah,
So
I think it was 3
so
years.
let me try to put the pieces of the puzzle together, right? We have a $5 million
Mhm.
override that is permitted to grow at under Prop 2.5 at 2.5% a year. So that automatically has growth in it that we're able to collect. It's still paid by the taxpayers, right? But that line in the middle is the operating deficit, which is currently covered by that override. At some point, it is possible that override will be insufficient to cover the operating loss. Outside of the capital piece, which is the bottom half of this,
Yeah.
right? Which if we vote to do that, we're doing it, right? So really the question is, the reason I ask this question is there's two questions. There is a dollar amount that we're going to borrow that we know what that's going to do to your tax bill for a period of 20 years, right? If that's the borrowing, right? We know that.
Yeah.
The unknown is what is the future of the operating deficit of the facility. And that's what this exercise tries to answer, right? And what it says is in year one, that deficit is 4.2 million. And based on the assumptions in this analysis, in year 10, it will be 8.57 million, right? So that it's just it's numbers. There's no judgment here. This is just numbers. Yeah.
I know it's not judgment, but if we currently have an operating of 5 million plus 2.5%, I guess I'm getting confused right there because like in year one, it says something about 825 maybe, and then underneath it says 4,205. And my question is that, well, maybe it's 4 million.
It's 4,205,000,
whatever.
and that's the loss when you take into account the
No, I
revenues that
totally
Island Home brings
understand
in.
red. I get what that is. So I guess my question is again, for clarity, is that 4 million being added to the 5 million, or is that where we?
No, the
are
5
now
million is
the 5
covering
million,
the
right?
4.2.
That's what I'm trying to get to, is that, when you're looking at year 10, you have to subtract out what we're already paying. So when it says 8,000 blah, blah, right, we have to subtract the fact that we're already paying the 5 million. So in other words, I'm just trying, obviously I'm
The-
pro our island home.
There
but I'd
might
like
be
to-
in the future an additional, say, $3 million subsidy that's going to be needed.
Right.
But sort of the point that I was
Right.
trying to make with all of the other operational expenses that the town has is they're all growing,
Right, right.
but so
correct.
is our tax base.
I get that. I just wanted to make sure that we weren't getting confused in
I would say
addition and subtraction.
somewhere in somewhere from year 3 to 5, it'll need an override, probably be 3 to 5 million in year 3 to 5. The top line is going up, one's going up 32% and the costs are going up 50% over that 10-year period. So there's a split there that's it's unlikely to go away. So somewhere in year 3 to 5, we will we will have another override.
More.
That's the sort of the most direct way I can think of saying it.
Yes, I always need more too.
Oh, sure, Rick.
Yeah, no, I was just gonna, Matt, you're right, that we will need an override. We think, based on this set of projections, that override will come around year 7, 6 points, where the current override, which is $5.6 million, goes up 2.5% a year, will be outpaced by the growth in expenses. And we think that's going to be in year 7.
Tom. Tom's been wanting to say something for a while.
I've been patient. Okay. No, okay. Okay. I have a couple things. To Amy's point on the private pay, I'm going to engage in a little bit of speculation here. I'm guessing since we're a public facility and we have to serve anybody who is able to pay and meets the criterion of care, that we couldn't just say, oh, it's 5,000 and make it an arbitrary number just to make up a deficit. I'm just guessing on that. So I think there are probably some limits to where that 800 could go, just generally. And I have a question about the pro forma assumptions on the numbers of private care, private pay, Medicare, and Medicaid for the 10, 19, and 23 on the previous slide, Craig, if you could. Great. Are those, Tom, I guess I'll ask you, are those based on OIH numbers currently, or are those numbers that are kind of more standardized to the industry?
So, good question, Tom. Is that both? Are you talking on the rate side or the payer split, the mix between the residents?
Yeah, the payer
both?
side.
So the industry. So we were able to compare this to the state. The rates are very comparable across the board: private, Medicare, Medicaid. So today's state average for Medicare rates, for instance, Tom, are around $700 per day. So you bump this out a couple of years, the $800 per day is reasonable. You try to keep private pay rates the same as Medicare or higher than Medicare daily rates, and then Medicaid is what it is. And those obviously will be lower than Medicare and private pay. As far as the split, or I call it payer mix, so the split between how many residents are private compared to Medicare, Medicaid, that's very aligned with what the industry says across the market within the state and nationally.
Okay, and does the number 10, 9, and 23 based on those 3 categories, does that track with OIH's actual, Bob?
Yeah, Bob Eisenstein again, through you, Chairman. Exactly. Yeah, we talked about this, and feel free to chime in, Tom. We've actually hit numbers as high as 12 private and 8 Medicare currently. And so the trick is going to be to average this out when we get into new building. Obviously, I'm an operator, so I'm going to address a couple of comments. But you mentioned Matt as well as Amy. The trick is obviously going to be to increase revenue over time. And again, Tom, you can feel free to chime in on this. What we've seen historically throughout the state, once a building goes all to single private rooms, it is a tremendous marketing boost in general, just to attract both of those increase in markets. And it's something that we call the payer mix. So the combination of Medicare, to your point, Tom, the number of people in the Medicare bucket, the number in the private bucket tends to increase substantially. I don't want to, it's aspirational, but as an operator, I have every belief. We've seen this in other homes. We toured some other homes that about a 50-bed facility in Weymouth, for example, that did the same model that we're doing, converted to all private. Now, theirs went through the roof only because they are off island, a lot of general hospitals feeding them. But also in a new building, we usually do about a 9-month pre-lease, what we call pre-lease startup. So there's a lot of marketing. We haven't talked about that, but a lot of effort goes into a little bit to your point too, Amy. And lastly, just as a point of clarification, under state regulations, there's no regulation that tells us what the private rates could be. It's really just what the market would bear. So it's kind of combination of all of this. But my hope would be that we could achieve those numbers that we've already achieved in the current, constricted building, in a new building, and even go beyond that. Again, I'm the operator, but that's my
okay.
opinion.
That's I have a couple more things, if that's okay. That's interesting, and that kind of fills a little bit in the gaps for the assumptions on me. But I have another question for you. Can you tell us what the average occupancy rate has been over the last several years at OAH?
Yeah, we presented that before. We average right around 37 historically over time. Again, it's been as high as 42 on certain occasions. Much of that has to do with the in and out of the short-term rehab. And just one other point to make, people have said this in other places where it's 45 beds means 45 patients, residents. We've really treated close to 100 people throughout the year because of the short-term people coming in and out.
Okay.
There's about, I think it's averages around 82% occupancy on a percentage basis.
So based on that, we're assuming a higher occupancy rate in this projection because it's a new building. And I'm sorry, I'm going to make you answer another question. I'm going to ask you another question. Are you allowed to decide among different ratepayers who is allocated a bed? Or is it a first come, first served situation?
It's basically a first come first. You're not allowed to discriminate based on payer source. But it turns out it works out kind of just generically because of the number of beds and the influx of patients.
I have a question.
Yes, go ahead.
I'm not sure you can answer this, but as general healthcare costs continue to increase and the government takes more and more control over healthcare, will Medicare still pay these rates in the future? Because at some point, when we have more and more single payer systems, people are going to want to have, they're going to reduce what people are paid.
Mm-hmm.
Is that going to happen?
Well,
I should say, when is that going to happen?
Yeah, we don't really have any guarantee on that, but my history on all this is it's Medicare is part of the Social Security legislation, technically, historically, and it's a political issue. If there was going to be anything, they call it the third rail. So I can't answer that, but so many people now are on Medicare, and the percentage of elderly only increasing. It would be, it would end up being a big deal if there was any changes to Medicare. On the Medicaid side, the state of Massachusetts helps fund 50% of the Medicaid. So we've been fortunate here in Massachusetts where they've been sort of backstopping Medicaid there was an infusion of $120 million into the state budget just for nursing homes. And we have a strong lobby. I would probably address that more to your local politicians. We have not heard anything to the contrary as far as how long Medicare would be funded. And the last piece I would say is on the Medicaid side, 70% of all nursing home residents throughout the state are funded by Medicaid. So it's a large percentage of residents throughout the state that are on public pay. So.
I wanted one question about the contract labor. How are we going to have 100,000 in savings on contract labor? Are we going to is a better building going to attract year-round nurses so we don't need it, or what's
a combination? We're actually already working on a plan. I'm working closely with Amanda in HR on converting some of the travelers to full-time town payroll. We had one male nurse convert last year. So it's a combination of factors. We hear from these are young nurses, and we kind of hear all the time what's incentivizing to them. The new building would definitely help attract more people to come to town payroll.
And just do keep in mind, if there is more demand for this facility, we do have the ability to apply for 12 additional beds and have some semi-private rooms, which will still be far above what we have now with private bathrooms and so forth, and size and lifts and all the facilities. But I just wanted to make the point as we're going into town meeting with this, and it's a very big ask. And we have a lot of other things that it's about what choices the community wants to make about what kind of services we need to have here, want to have here, and are willing to subsidize to have here. Anything else?
Madam Chair, I just make a kind of final comment. I totally agree. I think, that's why we sent it to town meeting, put it on the warrant. And I think one thing that the voters should be keenly aware of is that there's a lot of other projects out there that are on the collision projects, the capital projects, and this is the biggest among all of them. And this is going to take all the bandwidth from town admin. I mean, besides the general operations of the town, obviously. And that's just something that's going to have to be put into folks' calculus on this as they weigh what's important. And it will be a state-of-the-art facility. It will look great, and I'm sure it will function great. It is going to potentially sidetrack other priorities that we may have as a board or future board, and or those in the community. And folks will just have to weigh that and figure out what's best.
I would just add to that, Madam Chair, it will sidetrack. I mean, we just can't do everything. If we do this, there's something we won't do. If there's something, we do this, or we do something else, we might do this. So it will sidetrack.
And this has been pushed aside for other things for a number of years. And just to be very clear, if we don't build a new facility, we will not be in this business anymore. There's not a going back to the drawing board. There's not a plan B. There's not a, we can just do some minor renovations to the existing building. It's not going to happen tomorrow, but this is a choice on whether we continue to have a nursing facility on Nantucket. Matt?
People were asking me, and I probably said the wrong thing, but they were asking me, you know, how long would we go? And I said, well, it wouldn't close tomorrow, but, you know, 3 years, 5 years, 7 years, we don't know. We'd be in a wind down. So, you know, so I was what do we have when people ask that question, what do we tell them? Because I was making stuff up.
I don't think that's made up. I think we're also saying 3 to 5 years, and there would need to be a wind down. And at some point after town meeting, if the project is not approved, I think we will have to, over some period of time, maybe a year, maybe a few months, we'll have to figure out a date at which that's when we start the wind down.
And it's a multi-year process and yeah.
Campbell?
Hi, thanks again. I just, I look at this, I get everything, but I look at this, and part of it to me is a choice as to whether we're going to be multi-generational community or whether we're only going to service a certain part of community, because at some point people will go, well, I'm moving to my next phase, therefore I'm leaving, and that's why I say, it's really about a multi-generational whether we're going to be that kind of community or whether we're just going to become a transient community for the, time. So that's sort of the way I'm thinking about it. Thanks.
Thank you. Okay. I think we're done with that for tonight. Next up, we have select board reports and comments. Preliminary review of potential select board comments for the May 4th annual town meeting warrant articles, including Article 11, Our Island Home, and Article 36, Offshore Wind Stabilization Fund, among potentially others. And we are going to need to craft a positive motion on Our Island Home.
I would suggest that you go through this article by article. There are a couple of updates here and there that we can give. We do have a potential draft comment for you on Article 36 and a potential positive motion on Article 11, the Island Home article. And there might be some other, again, updates to be made here and there. At your meeting next week, these comments will need to be finalized, and then the warrant will get totally finalized and sent to the printer.
So next week is the final. So we have to, all right.
Yep. And just so everyone knows, I will be remote next week, but I'll be present online. Greg, do you want to bring them up on the screen, the warrant?
Can you get to the warrant, Greg? There we go. Yeah, to go down a few pages. There we go. So Articles 1, 2, probably up to 10. I don't think you usually comment on those.
10 capital.
10 is the general fund capital. I think you've seen this. It's been, has a positive motion from FinCom with all the projects. And then 11 is our island home. And as we know, there's a not to approve by FinCom. And there's, at the board's request, there is a positive motion that has been drafted and reviewed by bond counsel. Can you bring that up, Greg? I think you just had it. Yeah, there we go. So I think the discussion most recently about this was to have a comment that basically maybe says something like the board puts forward a positive motion. And that's what it would be.
I'm not sure why that's not coming up on the Zoom screen. It's just hard for me with it right behind me. It's okay. So, I mean, realistically, I would just say that we're putting forth the positive motion.
I'm just wondering,
For
does
the-
it need more explanation than that? Does it need a, and I don't want to say this is your last chance, guys, but I'm thinking along those lines of, if I were presenting this to my employees, I'd be saying we should have done this 6 years ago when it was a third of the price, and we didn't. And if we don't agree to do it now, we are not going to be able to do it. That's how, but I don't know, it's not my employees who are all a bunch of young kids and, it's the town, but how do you present it to the town in a way that's, friendly but
I think Don said it really well earlier. We could maybe summarize that down into a couple of sentences, that this is a choice on whether or not to have this state-of-the-art facility. It is a choice to be made by voters. It could impact other projects. I don't know if we want to go that far to say that, but maybe. And that this is basically it. If this is not approved, there will be steps taken at some point to initiate closure. Something like that. Don,
I wouldn't put the impact of the projects.
Okay.
I wouldn't, because that's so, because really it shouldn't. We're running it now. We're going to be hiring, people that are going to be building it and constructing it and everything else. There's going to be issues you guys are going to deal with, but it's not, anyway, I think that's not quite it, but
I mean, it will be an override, so
it'll impact from the money perspective.
we're adding
Yes.
it. A lot of people who will probably never use it are paying for a lot of it and may have feelings about it. But it doesn't mean that we can't afford, that we definitively can't afford other things that are important to us.
Yeah. Like, I don't want people to think that.
I think to me, it's the part you said about, and I think maybe it is that it is the intention of the current select board that this is the last opportunity for the community to vote to build a new facility and stay in the nursing home business. And this not passing both thresholds will initiate a closure, a procedure to close the current island home at some point in time, or something like that. Like, really clear. It's.
Have we voted? Have we voted a closure? We've general consensus. We've said it, but we haven't made an official vote.
Well, I think if we're gonna decide on a comment such as this, we're in essence deciding that that's where we're at as a board.
Right.
Very close and shared voting.
To not put it back on the warrant was
Yeah.
that. Yeah.
Madam Chair.
Yeah.
Yeah, the other thing is that eventually DPH, the Department of Public Health, will, because we're out of compliance, will someday close us down, but they have, or for whatever reason, given us this time to figure this out.
I mean, I think I would say something like, we are at the point where it is a necessity to build a new facility if we want to stay in. And I don't even want to call it a business, because I think that's what's creating the confusion with the finance committee and the capital committee, that this is somehow a business that should make money. This is a government service to care for, as Campbell said, a segment of our population. And it is not a moneymaker. But I think that is the main point. If we want to continue to provide this level of service, we have to build a new building. And this is the last plan that this board is going to put forward, because it costs a lot of taxpayer dollars just to get to this stage. And we will I think maybe we do come out and say that we will be in the unfortunate position of needing to close.
Right. And I was just, because we're beating, or at least you don't beat around the bush in here. You say it's 3 to 5 years. So I think, to say at some point in the future leads people to believe that there's options, something else could come along. And all the meetings that have been to in here, it's 3 to 5 years. And that, I think, even at a presentation some number of months ago, when they started looking at the process for this, the announcements, preparing to move people to sites within the state, so I think something definitive would just be helpful in people's minds.
How about something like operate, we recommend this, for the ability to operate efficiently and cost effectively. And if this is not supported, we are closing in 3 to 5 years. The plan is to close in 3 to 5 years.
How about, should this not pass, the board will deem this as the community's decision to no longer provide nursing home services into the future?
Yeah, something like that.
Without a lot of detail, which will include the eventual closure of the existing island home. I want it to be super definitive, like we are not going to talk about building a facility somewhere else, or, we've been around and round on this and it only costs more. So this is like fish or cut bait moment for the community as to whether we want to pay for having nursing home services available on the island. And a no vote is to me, a signal that is the community's decision is to not offer those services into the future.
Amy
Eldridge. I like the idea that Matt and Brooke have mentioned. I think you got to take the emotional part out of the motion,
Right.
because I think I've never seen a motion with an emotional attachment to it in our town warrant, like ever. And so I think the emotional part should be taking place between now and town meeting, outside of that motion that you guys have on the board. I like it being clean and explanation that, yes, in 3 to 5 years, if this vote does not take place, this is a minor timeline that we think is appropriate and could happen. But I think making it very emotional, you're swinging a lot of votes. And is that what you like? I don't know. I just think that it's not appropriate. Thank you.
I'd be willing to try to craft something to bring back next week for us to review. So we're working with a draft and we can wordsmith it from there. Is that, or how do you feel? Is that?
Sure.
Yeah, I think
Is
that's
everyone
good.
okay with that?
Yeah, and the rest of this is all fine. It's just a 1 or 2 sentence preamble. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, this is not going to be part of the motion.
Right.
This would be a comment from the select board for some clarification. But also remember, I'm going to be giving a speech to present this along with some staff and consultants to give more detail. But, okay. So we'll hold that for next week. And then did we want to keep going through the warrant?
Sure. Article 12 is a debt exclusion for the school athletic facilities improvements.
I can't
Page
get to the back
84.
of the warrant now. Greg,
Oh, wait, page 54.
We'll see the, element. Yeah, it should be going to the warrant. There we go.
Now, are we on, this is what, 12?
Yep.
We did receive an email that said that I think the public, we should talk a little bit about but we have, that this has to be, that we can't change this to a grass field because the bond is, the bond is written in such a way that it refers back to this, correct?
Through you, Madam Chair. So that question, I think at the last meeting with the joint meeting was asked, and we discussed this yesterday with bond counsel, and it's bond counsel's opinion that if the motion is changed to grass and the article were to pass, it would be inconsistent with the ballot question, and it would render the ballot question moot. And we would need to have a special town election by September 15th of 2026 to be able to proceed with the project to specifically allow the exemption of the debt service from Proposition 2.5. So if this were changed to grass, it would essentially, if it passed, would render the ballot question moot, would have to start that process with a new ballot question.
But would say it was approved, say grass was approved, would a ballot question have to be done by September?
Right.
To do it? Okay.
Yes, so you have until September 15th when you have your, when the ATM is before June 30th. So we would have until September 15th to do a special town election if it was changed and passed.
So I've got one other question is, in here, we're talking about methods of testing.
Correct.
A little bit in there.
Yep.
What if we find, what if they're doing the RFP, they're doing the bidding and they find they need more testing,
Sure.
different testing? Are they allowed to
Yeah.
layer that in then?
Yes, so
Right.
if you read the language in there, it's a little bit small standing back here, but it does allow for, it says, or any other federal, state, or local requirements that are enacted prior to the issuance of this for the project, which are more stringent than the above referenced requirements. So if there were new requirements that were more stringent, that particular language, which we did discuss yesterday with bond counsel as well, he approved and agreed that that was the appropriate way to do that.
So we're
We are
on
covered,
this
yes.
If we go more stringent, yeah, I got you.
Correct.
So I just think it's important for everyone to understand where it is. Yeah.
Tom?
And Matt, at Board of Health, we've been talking extensively about all this, and tomorrow at 4, we have an agenda item on this, and I would imagine the agenda item is pretty vague, but I would imagine this is exactly is going to come up
Right.
on the testing piece.
Brooke?
Yeah, I'm not inclined to comment on this. I feel as though this is more in the school committee's purview and Board of Health. And so I mean, obviously I don't see our weighing in on this as adding any value to the already intense conversation around it.
Madam Chair, I agree, because if we started to discuss this, we would be here for another 2 weeks.
Yeah, I'm not inclined to make a comment on this one. This is a recommendation from the school. I just, for clarification, and I think that they're doing this it this way because the 26 million is not finalized. They don't have their bids in, but they're doing it with bid alternates so that they can pull out pieces of this because it's not just the field, it's the field, the bleachers, it's buildings. They can pull out the building renovations if they need to, if it so that it doesn't go over budget.
And I'm not saying, I didn't bring that up for us to comment on it. I brought it up because there are things that have happened the last day or so that the public should understand that are happening sort of as we move in real time, that I think people should understand. And like Tom said, there's more happening tomorrow, and we got another email about it today from a chemist adding things up. So it continues.
Okay, thank you.
Madam Chair.
Yes.
Yeah, I think also if this were changed to town meeting, to kind of state the obvious, but to give the public who might be not following every little detail, if this were changed and we needed to hold a town election, obviously we set the warrant. So we'd have to consult the school committee, and would they be able to do that? And can they maintain it? Do they have the staff? And so we'd have to go through this whole process again. So it wouldn't be just a snap town election like, oh, it's September 15th or whatever. So yeah.
Next.
Next is the town employee housing. Positive motion from FinCom.
Do we want to add anything?
I definitely think that we should add a comment, something along the lines of the necessity for providing or being in control of housing units for municipal staff. The need for that is growing, and that I personally, and maybe the rest of the board, strongly supports the development of municipally owned housing for employees as part of our housing strategy, but also to support government operations in the long run, something along those lines.
How does the rest of the board feel?
I agree.
Fine.
Okay.
Definitely.
So
Okay.
you could maybe draft it and send it around again.
Sure. Okay.
Okay. 14.
14 is
Loran Barracks.
Loran Barracks.
I mean, it's a similar thing that we need to house employees, and this is, it has been an ongoing project. This is the next phase of it. I think maybe we should say something in support of it.
Say the same, similar, yeah.
Yeah. I'll write something that might be usable for both with
Okay.
maybe a sentence that's.
Yeah, I would just,
date or
with
something.
Loran, I would say that it's been an ongoing.
Yeah.
15 is the Somerset Sewer Project, and that we do have a couple of info sessions on this, as I mentioned earlier. As we know, there is some wording in the FinCom motion that would assess a portion of the cost to those served by the sewer extension.
Yeah, I mean, for me, I would like to make it clear that the select board does intend to have a portion of the people benefiting paid directly by them rather than it all going onto the tax base.
So do we want to support do we want to support that, do we want to say?
I do.
Yeah.
I think that that's the direction we need to start to go in as a community rather than adding every single thing to the tax base. I think a portion is fair, and I think that it's going to be something we'll need to do in other instances.
Just support the motion, is that enough? Or should we call out, including the recommendation that the cost should be shared between the tax base and those who benefit directly from the project, or something simple like that?
Well, it says it's authorized to assess up to 25%. I think we might want to be clear, if this is how we collectively feel, that we do intend to exercise that authorization. So that when people are voting on it, they are prepared for it.
How about the select board support the finance committee's recommendation and believe up to 25% assessment is appropriate? We have a lot of other capital. We believe that's appropriate. Is that something like that?
Yeah. Yeah,
I think that works.
Madam Chair.
Yeah.
I'm also a little tempted to write like a 2-paragraph history lesson of how this came about and why we put it on the warrant, but it's really not the place for it. And I think some of the info sessions, and I'm sure whoever's speaking at town meeting will cover that we had the sewer master plan meeting and we had a lot of things, and there's 0% financing, and that the state may force us to do this anyway at some point, and on and on. So it isn't that this one is a little bit more complicated than meets the eye.
Some of that detailed explanation will also be in the voter's guide.
Yeah.
Okay. Article 16.
Oh, yeah. Tom Nevers debris removal.
I don't think we need a comment.
I don't want to comment. It just makes me mad that we're cleaning it up how many years later.
We are working on that with the
I know.
buds, but it's slow going. 17 is the Public Works Facility supplemental funding for design, not a debt exclusion. But
Brooke?
There's a part of me that wants to comment here. I think if nothing else, because we continue to put this on because, well, I continue to support putting it on because I believe that we need a new DPW facility. And I think it will be explained that a thorough evaluation is being done to find a more a less costly overall project cost than had been presented last year, and that this money actually facilitates that analysis and redesign. So I don't know whether that's just in the town's staff's comments or whether we want to say something like that, because I think we have to answer the question, why do you keep asking us to do this when the voters have said no? And I feel like in a way they were saying no to a $60 million project. And if we're not likely to bring a $60 million project to them at the completion of this design phase, how do we explain that? So.
But the select board supports a redesign in more cost, a less costly, a redesign and a less costly project.
Yeah. And these funds are needed
Yeah.
to get to a design,
There you go.
a revised design.
I would agree with that.
Okay.
Tom?
And Brooke, I know you've been meeting with committee on a
Mhm.
sort of subcommittee on that, including community members.
Yes.
Sorry, Amy Eldridge. I see up there it says 1 Shadbush Road and or 188. Is that going to be explained as to when you guys decide if it'll be rebuilt at site or moving to a new location? If you look at Article 17,
it's in there because that is the original wording of the original appropriation. And according to the finance director, you have to keep the original wording, but I don't think there's any intent to keep the facility at 188 Nantucket Road at this point.
okay, it just looks a little misleading when you look at it, when you click on the town site, that it looks like you're giving us an option to keep it at that location and or move it to a new home.
Maybe we should include that in our.
So we could put that in the comment. Okay. We can finalize that next week. 18.
18 is just enterprise fund operations. I don't think the board usually comments on that. Or 19 is enterprise fund capital. 20 is enterprise fund budget transfers. The next several, I don't think the board has typically commented on. Their annual appropriation articles. up through up through up through 34. 35 is the citizen warrant article about the stop signs on Surfside Road.
Yep.
Do we see this as a referendum on the success or failure of the pilot because of the timing? In other words, we're piloting the stop signs up till town meeting. And then the voters are going to come in and say, and this is their opportunity. Feels to me like the opportunity to say we like it or we don't like it. Do we want to say something to that effect? Because this is non-binding, right? As a citizen's article.
I was just going to say, I'm assuming the citizen is going to call it and make a positive motion.
Mhm.
So I don't know if we really want to
I don't think we have.
weigh in. I mean, I think it basically will be in effect to what you said, but
Yeah.
I don't think we need to make a comment.
Okay.
36, we do may need to make a comment.
Yep, 36. There is a comment in the packet.
I just need to go to a different screen.
I can't share my screen, but
What page is it?
75.
I could just read it.
Oh yeah, could
Do
you?
you want me to just read it out loud? The select board recommends against Article 36 and supports the Finance Committee's motion not to adopt it. The settlement funds are currently held in escrow by the town's special counsel and serve two purposes. One, supporting ongoing efforts to oppose future wind turbine proposals and advocate against the negative impacts of offshore wind on Nantucket. And two, paying claims submitted by residents and businesses who suffered damages from the wind turbine blade failure in July 2024, as required by the town's settlement with GE Vernova. Placing these funds into a stabilization fund would require a town meeting vote to access them, creating significant practical problems. First, it would impair the town's ability to engage professional services quickly in response to the fast-moving landscape of offshore wind development, including specific permitting actions and the evolving state and federal policies. Second, the restrictions Article 36 imposes on permissible uses could prevent the town from paying resident and business claims in a timely manner and could limit the town's flexibility to address unforeseen needs. Finally, if Article 36 passes, the law would lock in its restrictions for a minimum of 3 fiscal years. The town could not change the permitted uses of the funds nor rescind its dedication vote during that period, and any amendment would require a 2/3 vote of town meeting. So basically, this summarizes the unintended consequences of the inflexibility of a stabilization fund as a way to allocate these funds. So.
I think that's perfect.
Yeah, I think it's great.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so we'll go with that. And 37. Probably have no comment.
So
Then we go into zoning.
yeah, zoning goes through 60 something, I think.
Oh, there's a couple in there that is the big, long, what was it, the flood zone? What is that? How is the comment? We may want to support. There's that. Yeah, planning board and finance. Updates are required to comply. They both say that. And we could pile on and say we support them, or doesn't really matter.
I don't think we need to.
Let's not then.
Yeah.
All right, 43.
So zoning goes through 63. And the next non-zoning article is 64. I think it's pretty straightforward. I don't know that the board would need to comment on it. It's establishing a tax title collection revolving fund. 65 is acceptance of a general law pertaining to affordable housing property tax exemption.
I mean, the only thing this does is it adds another tool in our toolbox for affordable housing, but I think we can say that on the floor if it gets called.
I don't think we need to comment.
Yeah.
Which one are we?
Yeah, I feel like we've actually commented on more tonight than we usually do. We don't,
Yeah.
we just usually leave it to.
We're also, I think we've talked about it more, I'm a little more ahead than we've been in other years.
Yeah.
67 is solid waste disposal bylaw amendment. That's to do with adding additional staff who could enforce that particular bylaw specifically with regard to unsecured loads. 68 is the noise bylaw. Probably you've talked about that extensively.
I don't think we need to comment.
Recommended by FinCom. 69 is a pretty minor bylaw amendment. Ask the Council for Human Services membership. 70 is a couple of revolving fund changes. 71 is the very, very, very long stormwater management bylaw. This is a new bylaw. This is what one of the articles are having some public info sessions on. I don't know if the board wants to comment, but what may come up at town meeting is people asking how much this is going to cost them. We're going to cover that in the public informational sessions. That is not definitive, and it will not be, it's not covered in the bylaw. That would come in regulations that the bylaw authorizes the board to establish at a future time. We are working on regulations, but that the concept of how stormwater management would be funded going forward can be reviewed, but specific, how much is it going to cost me is not ready yet. 72.
But we could also, if someone asks, we could always say that those will only happen after, those will be set by after a public hearing.
Yes.
So
Yeah,
I think
and
that's,
probably a lot of public outreach.
yeah, that will, these will not happen overnight. This will be set by the select board and staff, and recommendation of staff to the select board after a public hearing, or to the water board, or whoever it is.
Yep.
All right.
72 is a citizen warrant article. 73 is the authorization to lease town-owned property for erosion control project on Baxter Road. The Finance Committee does have a positive motion. There are internal discussions occurring with Sconset Beach Preservation Fund. It remains to be seen whether those discussions will result in a draft license that can be presented to the board at a meeting before town meeting. We hope that that's the goal anyway. I think we are going to need someone to explain this at town meeting. And obviously it's rather controversial, so that will have to be decided at some point.
I know you guys have a meeting with them again on Friday, right? But I think next week, if it doesn't look like we're going to have a license agreement, or if you're not making progress on it, I mean, I think there needs to be some comment that, you know, we support this if we have an agreed upon license agreement or something to that effect.
I'm worried that even if we have the most amazing license agreement that at all times, that it would be hard to get this, to get the support between now and town meeting. That's my biggest concern. There's, Vince has done a really good job, and there's a lot that I'm just so we've done a really good job. They've dug into a lot of it, and I think it's, we're close. But I just worry, even if it's great, that it will be a very difficult sell. And so I've made that clear and we've talked, we've had those conversations, but
Yeah, I don't disagree with that.
I know.
I mean, I guess really what I'm saying is that we would support more of a take no action if we don't have a license agreement rather than a positive motion. Because we have to have an agreed upon license agreement and I am concerned about it not having enough airtime.
yeah, but once we get a license, we should still be having, we've told the public we would get a license and bring that to them, which means that there's got to be a conversation about it. And so I just think that to build consensus on something that is this contentious, is, sort of a, I've taken planning seminars on how to build consensus and how to include the public and how, how many meetings and how you do it. And it could take a year or 2 years. And so that by the time you finally have taken all the input, listened to all the different ideas, found the right way to do it, that people are all on board, you go for a vote and it's relatively easy. And I think that sometimes we're at this stage and we're a little late. And I worry that we're putting ourselves at a disadvantage. So.
And Madam Chair, I
Yes.
can't probably support this even with a licensing agreement. I'm tired of this always coming up at the last minute, this whole project. I've had it.
Yeah, and
So if the board supports this, you're going to support it without my support.
okay. And I mean, in addition to all of the details of the license agreement, we know that there's a lot of citizens that are really concerned with how the sand requirements are going to function in practice.
Mm.
And that definitely needs some broad discussion. Brooke?
So I think, given the timeline, right, we have to adopt this next week and we have to comment next week. I like your idea of maybe not necessarily, we have two options: to say we support it, but only if we have a license agreement, or simply to say the board does not support, if at the time of town meeting, there is no license agreement agreed upon, the select board would not support the passage of this article at that time, or something like that. Like clearly, and I agree, Matt, like the time's not there, but I want to signal early that we put this on in the hopes that we would get to an agreement and haven't gotten there yet. And I'm definitely not in support of it without said agreement. So I think our credibility is on the line, that we should at least say that we're not asking for a blanket permission.
Yeah, I think the way I said it at the beginning was not the right direction to go. It's actually that we would suggest that the town meeting take no action if there is no license agreement.
I would have to think about the wording.
Well, why don't you think about it till next week?
I'll think.
And we still have we have a couple more meetings and, and so, because it has to be, we have to have a license agreement, it has to be acceptable, and it has to be something that we all feel is positive for the community. And so we put this on trying to be cooperative with, because with SBPF, I think we felt we got pressured that night to put it on, and we did. But I think that we have to realize the pressure is going to swing the other way, and we're going to get, and so, we had a chance to really bring the two sides together, and I don't think we have. So.
Do we recall, I have sort of a phrasing in my mind that we put it on the warrant conditioned upon there being a license. Maybe we just say that the select board agreed to include this on the warrant condition on the hammering out of a license ahead of town meeting. And
I mean, I think you're right. Why don't we refer back to the minutes from that meeting and make a decision next week?
Next week,
Yeah.
yeah, okay.
Madam Chair?
Yes.
Do we know whether SBPF or whoever is going to speak on this outside of us, basically? Do we know that? No?
I would assume so.
Okay.
if it's a non-voter, they'll have to get special.
Get approval from
permission.
Sarah, yeah.
And if we have a hearing, if we have a public hearing and we're discussing the license or the sand or something else, they will certainly be here and discuss, what their plans would be and how they would do it. So.
Well, I've made my
Malcolm?
point. I
Understood.
just don't think there's time. I cannot support this article, period.
Yeah, I think we need to comment because right now it has a positive motion from the finance committee and we need to clarify.
Okay.
Let's just run through the
More-
last.
more
you
next
know,
week,
I don't know
80,
if we need to comment on anything else.
Yeah, 74 is home rule petition on planning commission. Has positive motion with some. I think that's agreed upon.
And what was their final? Oh yeah, here it is. What did the how did they say it? What did the planning board say here? Or finance,
It's just a FinCom motion,
or FinCom, that's what I meant, sorry.
which I think came from
FinCom
planning.
supported
Yep.
74 and
Is it take no action?
take no action on 75.
Yeah, I support 74 as long as it's not amended. I think that we would I think everyone would like to see this whole thing end. And so I don't know if it would be helpful to put that we support 74 without, after, because it's basically just, they're just saying, we recommend this, the FinCom. Because and we can talk about this next week, but in some way, should we be saying, that this was a compromise and after a few years, we've come to a great thing and we hope that this is, is adopted as is.
Maybe we could say something like, we appreciate the collaboration
go.
and the compromise that was reached between the proponents of Articles 74 and 75, and we support the FinCom's motion
Recommendations
as written.
There you go. Perfect.
Sounds good.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, I thought somehow Article 74 should include the language of being an amended 74, right? As amended by FinCom, because Article 74, isn't it? It's the amended article.
Mhm.
Okay,
Yeah.
great, thanks.
No, that's perfect, Don.
Okay.
That's good.
76.
The next several, I think, are real estate.
And 75 may get called by somebody just in case 74 is messed around with. So
No, my understanding is that it will likely get called, but then the call will probably be pulled.
Exactly.
Just to make sure that there aren't amendments made.
And I believe the moderator has said, should 74 pass, that she would not allow 75 to be considered because it would be the equivalent of a motion to reconsider,
Yeah,
but by
yeah,
the
you did
wrong
say that.
process.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, 76.
Okay, 76 is home rule petition, which is a companion article to a real estate article. I think 77 is a home rule petition that clarifies a prior home rule petition. It's a little bit different. 78 is a citizen article that was a take no action. I think you all know about that one. 79 is a real estate article regarding a conservation restriction at Sherburne Commons, which is something that was meant to have been done years ago, and this is formalizing that. 80 is a utility easement at the workforce housing on Waite Drive in Tacoma Green. 81 is clarifying some property ownership for the public cemetery at Newtown Road, or Newtown Cemetery. 82, that was a citizen article about Boynton Lane, take no action. And 83 and 84 are standard financial articles, which are both a take no action.
Okay, I think we're all set until next week on this. Next up, we do have the update of the investigation of the African Meeting House vandalism. And I'll go to you, Malcolm, and then I think that there were some
Well,
questions.
Cliff has to say, I have nothing more to report than what I said last week.
Okay,
I haven't talked to the investigator.
Clifford.
I guess Malcolm gave his report that they were going to the Cape and Islands DA, Rob Galavois. I'm not sure why the town attorney made the, let's say, comment that he didn't think that the DA would cooperate, because we've spoke with Rob probably 9 months ago and he had a lot of great information. So I just wanted to make it clear that I'm not sure why I would put out the suggestion that Rob wasn't going to cooperate. So for everybody out there who supports him, hopefully that wasn't misconstrued on his effort to support the investigation. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you. Campbell?
Sorry to keep popping up. So I just had a question, a sort of technical question. Does this person who's been hired, do they have like a timeline, or is this like whenever you get to it? Or, do we have some expectation for when this ends, right? Like, because it's sounding, I don't know, like we're not on the front burner of whatever the situation is. I'm just wondering if there's a timetable and maybe payment. I'm thinking like contracting, third, something like that. Thank you.
There is a contract. And
Well, we have a contract. I can't remember the time. It's a significant time he has to do it. But the company, from what I'm not doing the investigation. I'm just trying to think about what he's doing by what he's requested. And it's been pretty substantial what he's requested. And I suspect the next time I talk to him, I will again try to get a timeline. I'm just, like I said before, I hope, in any project that, the 11th commandment, you have time, cost, and quality, and you only get two. So hopefully we're going to get cost and quality.
thanks. Okay, I think that's that for tonight. Any committee reports? Okay, is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Carries unanimously 5-0.